Most of us have asked the question at some time, why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, our guest today will share how her husband's journey went from not serious to bad and then to the worst.
Diana Gill is here to share about her husband's 10-year battle with cancer and how it affected the whole family.
Stay with us. This is Lifeline Today.
Welcome to Lifeline Today. Glad you've tuned into the broadcast. We're going to share something very powerful in the sense that many people can relate to what our guest is going to share today. Our guest is Diana Gill.
Like Princess Diana, right?
Yeah, like Princess Diana. We'll go with that, okay? But you wrote the book, Getting Well at Being Sick, and this is the story while you were married to your husband, David, and he went through a 10-year journey with cancer. And it's a story about how he started the book by writing Getting Well at Being Sick, and then the story continues. You finished the book with your daughters.
Yeah. Just let me ask you, first of all, you know, this is not a how-to book, but it's a really true journey of how he went through the cancer for 10 years. And the title of the book really is interesting, Getting Well at Being Sick. Can you just talk about that for us? It sounds to me like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Getting well at being sick.
It was David's title, and I wanted to keep with that as much as I could. It's not a memorial book sort of thing, but it really is the things that he learned about being sick in the hospital system, and he wanted people to have an idea of what to do, and in those situations, sharing his personal story of the negative things that took place, and then just the things that he learned.
You sometimes feel like that when you're in that situation, don't you? You're totally helpless.
Yes.
And you feel like, I've got to have a voice. Someone needs to advocate for me.
And that's really what his goal was. For anything that he would go through, he would want to share with others so that they could know, so that they could learn from it. As a pastor, he would always preach. He would be very transparent, and he would always share his stories of illness, the different things that he was going through. He would just share it right there so that people knew that he was going through something, and this is how God helped him through it.
So at the beginning here, we said it went from not serious to bad and then to worse. So when you first heard about this, you weren't thinking, this is the end.
It was when his first cancer, when we found that out, it was very surreal is what we call it, because you don't think that it's going to happen to you. And we just listened to the doctors, and we were learning things, how people responded to us, and we were just learning as we went along. And you don't actually have a manual for how you're going to do this journey, and each journey is so individual. So we just continued on in trusting the doctors as much as we could, and learning. And then there was little bumps along the way, for sure.
Of course, you were praying for the best.
Yeah, praying for healing, and continuing that. And I think the Getting Well at Being Sick title is that he had a couple of years of good health in between that time, but really when you're going to church, and he always felt like he was disappointing people because he was still sick.
Oh my.
So Getting Well at Being Sick is knowing how to do this journey well.
You know, that's an interesting statement you just made. I pastor a church myself, and we've had people go through this exact journey and then pass away. And I've always told our congregation the way to handle this is to believe for the best, prepare for the worst. We live in a world where things aren't perfect.
Yes.
And ideally, now we do see people healed. Joan went through a journey with cancer, and through that we seem to have gained some ability to see other people healed, and there has been a number, but it doesn't always happen, does it?
No, that's the book. It's a very raw book, you know, because it's okay. Does it have a happy ending? I just knew that I had
Well,
to
there's
finish
one
it.
happy ending. We know where he is.
Yes, and that was, he was quite confident of that, and
Yeah.
he knew that for sure, and that is our hope. And so I knew that, but then you don't know how you're going to feel.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I think that has come up through the book is how people react to this situation for you. How can people help?
When we're going through this, he mentions in the book about the financial burdens that it is. There's a lot of
yeah.
different things. We lived
Especially
in,
for a man.
yeah, and not being able to provide.
Yeah.
We lived in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, and most of the hospital visits and stays that he had were in Saskatoon. So that's about 2 hours, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're having to drive. So sometimes if an appointment is at a different time, you know, in the morning, you may have to get an extra hotel night. When I would go and visit and I would want to stay and be there, it cost me like lodging right there. There was a place right across the street that I was able to go to because I wanted to be there. So there's those costs, and financially to help out. That's what our town did for us. For
They did.
when he had to have a liver transplant, and that was in London, Ontario.
Wow.
And so our town put together a fundraiser. It was a Valentine's Day gala, and it was an amazing outreach, like, of support. And Dave, when we had he was very, very sick and he was waiting for a transplant, and he went around to each of the tables and thanked everyone for coming to it, because it was so special for us.
That must have been encouraging.
Very encouraging. You had the town behind you and believing for you, and we needed that because we didn't.
So it was
that.
not just your faith-based community or your church, but
Yes.
also the town. And
It's
Nipawin
kinda
is a
nice.
smaller town.
Yeah, it's
so
about
you
5,000.
you had the community
Yeah.
supporting you. That's wonderful.
And then, yeah.
Not very many people in a larger city could say they had the community. And so if they're not in a church that's,
Yes.
going to be their community,
I
it's
think we
really,
should-
really difficult.
I think we should
isn't
give
it?
a shout out to Nipawin then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say if you're watching this, you're in Nipawin. God bless you.
Yeah,
Your community
bless you.
did an awesome job.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But David dealt with 3 bouts of cancer. It seemed like the first one, like you said, it didn't seem too serious because, the operation was done and they
Yeah.
felt they got it all and he was fine.
Yeah.
But then what happened?
Well, then he had we didn't know what it was, but it was about, for 2 years on and off, he had pain that we would have to go to emergency for him to get morphine or Demerol to get rid of the pain. He was in that much pain, and we had to drop everything, get somebody to look after our kids, and we didn't know what it was, and then until they were able to see, and it was such a tiny little polyp that was causing so much, trouble for him. And then it was a matter of, well, you've got to have surgery, you've got to have this taken out, this little tiny tumor thing. And so in doing that surgery, there was much more that ended up happening,
Yeah.
complications.
Well, the
and-
surgery in itself was much more extensive, wasn't it? But then there were complications
Yeah,
after that
like,
one.
so it was about a 6-week run in the hospital where
Wow.
it was only supposed to be, maybe 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was an evangelistic minister at the time, where he had Bible camps that he
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be, like youth camps and such, he had about 5 booked that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our livelihood. That's what he was, doing.
Yeah.
And all of them had to be canceled. So you're dealing with disappointment, and then you're questioning, okay, God, what is happening here?
And your
Yeah,
income is drying
right.
up.
Yeah, but again, actually, there was people that sent in money to help us, to support us, and through different communities in the Saskatoon area, and we were able to make it. It was, and you're just humbled by it,
Yes, right.
But you got to see, if you can empathize for a moment with Diana,
Yeah.
how you must have felt. Because you're battling for your husband's life,
Yeah.
he's battling for his life,
Yeah.
and then additionally you're facing all these other financial stresses and difficulties. It's good to hear these things because you need to know this when you're talking to somebody that has these circumstances, to be sensitive to that, supportive,
Yes.
encouraging to.
Yes, and it's I would go to work, and then I would go to the hospital was just down the ways, but I would go on my lunch hours, I would go and see him, and then I would, you know, go finish my job. So trying to work and continue to do that, and then to be there for him, because in sickness and in health is a vow that you do when you get married. And you know, you kind of say it lightly because you're all, you know, we were 19 and 20 when we got married. Yeah, just like, oh, in sickness and in health.
Oh, yeah.
And it got tested. It got tested completely. And definitely, you know, knowing that I mean, I was committed and I just wanted him to be okay.
Can I just ask, were there people in the church or family that were able to look after your girls? Because you had 3 girls at home at that time.
Yeah, and they were, there was different, there was a church, well, it was a church couple, they were down the street from us, so they sent their daughter sometimes when I had to like go to emergency quickly for him or things like that. We had family members come, his mom came to look after, his sister came, and people just reached out to us to help us as best as they could. And as my kids got older, then we kind of left them sometimes on their own, and we just had to do what we could do.
You know, what I'm hearing from you is this would be very helpful for people going through this experience, because I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking you must have felt quite alone. Nobody else is going through what I'm going through and experiencing what I'm going through.
And I think that getting well at being sick, sometimes when people would pray and for healing, and I'm all for that. Like, definitely, you're being obedient to what God says. You are praying and
believe for the best.
You believe and you say pray for the sick. That's what he says.
Yeah.
But there was a time where it, like I say, it was exhausting to us because we couldn't get better. It wasn't happening. I didn't know what the trick was that could happen. But so sometimes it's a matter of pray that we'll have strength to get through today.
Yes, right.
Just pray for us today. Pray, yes, God's will, but that we would have the strength to get through today and know that God is still with us, God's presence. And
I can understand that, because going through the cancer journey myself, there were many days where Dick and I just said, God, help us get through the day.
Exactly.
And sometimes it was help us get through the hour.
Exactly.
And so if people can
Actually,
know...
it was 15 minutes, wasn't it?
If people, you know, that are outside, that have never gone down that journey, if they can just know what you're going through and what they can do for you, and it's all in the book. I think it's a very practical book.
And different things that people could do, things that you wouldn't think of. When anybody says that, you know, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Sometimes we didn't know. So sometimes, you know, ask Holy Spirit, what could you do for us? And it was surprising the little things that someone did for us.
I thought that was really
so
key that you said, even your role as a caregiver, you many times asked the Holy Spirit what you could do for your husband because you really didn't know day to day
It's amazing.
what he needed.
We're going to come back to you in a minute here. I want to just mention the book. It's called Getting Well at Being Sick. It's available. You can get the information from our prayer center or there on your screen. It's also available as an ebook. And again, this is a book that was started by her husband, who then passed away, and he asked his wife Diana to finish the book, and so she did, and as well as his children contributed to it. So it's a different kind of book. You'll find out it talks about taking you through the journey of dealing with something like this, especially when the diagnosis is not so good and the outcome isn't what you entirely expected. But you know, it's very encouraging, so that you know how you can deal with these issues and certainly help others as well. We're going to share this with our prayer center, and by the way, our phone lines are open. You can call in anytime. Our phones have been really busy, and so we thank you for that, but also just really appreciate all the prayer requests and the praise reports that are coming in. Let's go to that right now.
So many of our callers are needing miracle healing for themselves, for their loved ones, for friends. Ecclesiastes 3:1-3 says, for everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. And in verse 3, it says there is a time to heal. Here at Lifeline Today, we believe it is time for Jesus to heal again as he did 2,000 years ago. I want you to say that with me right now. Say, it is time. It is time. Will you join with us in faith for a healing revival to break out across this nation? And we'll join with you for your healing miracle. We decree it's your time. Give us a call right now at 403-942-0123.
Dick and Joan DeWert have a passion to see the spiritual climate of Canada changed and to have our nation rise to her prophetic destiny. To get this done, we need your help and generous support. So we ask you to prayerfully consider helping us reach the nation with a monthly partnership of any amount. When you partner with us, we will send you a brand new audio message by Dick DeWert called The Power of Small Things. It's an encouraging message on how God uses our faithfulness in the small things to accomplish great things for the kingdom of God. With your support, we can continue to reach the nation through television and other media. Thank you for your financial partnership with Lifeline Today. For more info, go to dickandjoan.com or call 403-942-0123.
Our guest today is Diana Gill, and she's written or co-authored the book Getting Well at Being Sick, and we're talking about the journey, which, I can understand what you're saying. A lot of Christians know about this. They always want to think in terms of somebody getting healed, but when the journey doesn't end the way you expect, there's a little bit of uneasiness with a lot of people. How do you handle this? And I heard you say this a couple times, that people didn't know how to talk to you, how to express their feelings for you or to encourage you. So we want to talk about in this segment, how did this journey affect you and your children?
Well, there was times of anger and frustration. I can remember just lying there and, Dave was sick lying there, and I just told him, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I was exhausted, and what was he supposed to do? He's laying there sick.
You told David this?
Yeah, I said, I don't know how to do this anymore, and I was so exhausted. And there were some people that spoke into my life, and there was a minister that came to visit at our church, and he was able to kind of see my exhaustion, and I was very thankful that he could see that. I don't even know if I recognized that that's what it was. I was like adrenaline. I was just, okay, I go to work, I come home, I look after Dave, I would just, that's what I wanted to do. And it was an isolating thing because you don't have time to just go hang out with friends or whatever. You don't, because each day you're just, okay, let's get through today. Yeah. And he really encouraged us to be thankful. And it really was a huge shift for us to be thankful, because I believe that every day I would put on these circumstances of heaviness because, oh, woe is me, look at what we're going through every day. And the thankfulness took that heaviness off as we began to thank God for what was there. We had each other, he was still there, and our children, and you begin to thankfully go through the day, and I found that gave me the strength rather than carrying that heavy weight around, and trusting that God was going to work all things together for his good.
Just shows you again the power of praise and thanksgiving.
Yes.
People might say, what? You're giving thanks? Well, listen, if you compare your life to some people in other parts of the world, we're
but
blessed.
I can imagine it wasn't easy when you started to do that,
No.
because you were dealing with physical fatigue, emotional fatigue, probably depression, spiritual fatigue, and questions. Why, God, aren't you healing my husband? And then your children are all dealing with those same things very quietly, because their stories are a little different. And I want you just to share a little bit about how the girls dealt with things.
Well, they were going through their teenage years, so that has its handful as it is, right? And so with their dad being this strong, he was a strong guy. He was very direct. He was very, would say how it is. He was a preacher, and he got to do that, right? You had to listen to him, but it was hard for the girls to see their dad weak. They loved their dad. They loved to see how he could, conquer things and with strength and dignity. And this was a different dad that they had to get to know. And I think that was a real challenge for them. And My one daughter, you know, she was 15 at the time, and she would have to, you know, visit us, you know, at the hospital at such a young age, and it was hard to just watch their dad weak. They wanted the strong dad, and so sometimes, you know what, they didn't want to come to the hospital. They didn't want to go through that, and it was really difficult.
But personally, I mean, I've read their little, what do you call them?
Little write-ups.
Yeah, write-ups at the end of the book, and my heart went out to them. But it's nobody's fault. Things just happen. But you know, they would say that people would come to them all the time and ask them, "How's your dad doing?" or "How's your mom doing?" But no one ever said, "How are you doing?"
Yeah.
And you know, they were a part of this whole journey as well. And so that's something that is something that we can learn, is that the children are suffering too, you know. And so
But
they
I
went
think
through many things like
the
this.
lesson there is that they should ask, how are you doing? I
How
think
are you
there's
doing?
this sensitivity, oh, I don't want to ask, maybe I'm intruding, maybe not. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you should ask. You should say, how are you doing?
Yes, and genuinely, not just like, hey, how are you doing? You know,
and
but
really,
it's just that personal touch of being able to. But I think that's people being vulnerable with people. That's a hard thing to do when maybe you don't want to know the answer. How am I going to answer them? If I tell them, you know, like, really, I'm struggling right now. I cried all last night. Or, and what does a person do? They don't know what to do.
and the girls were very honest in the book. I really liked that, because it was what it was.
Well, one daughter, she said, well, Mom, should I put this in the book, you know? And I said, do you want to help people? And she's like, yeah. And I said, then put it in the book.
Well, you said something earlier. There were times when you were angry, and I was just wanted to say then, well, you know, anger is a normal human response. It's when we hang on to anger that it becomes destructive.
And it's also part of the grieving process. Anger is part of the grieving process. And this is a 10-year journey. So I can imagine that, especially towards the end, there was a grieving process already going on.
Whatever that was, I don't know. I didn't think. I was in shock in the final days.
Yeah.
Talk to us about humor, because David talked a lot about how humor helped him along the road.
Well, he had, there was lots of humor things in the hospital. He tried to be one of the best patients. He tried to, you know, be good to the nurses, because then he knew he would be cared for.
I know
right.
that.
Yeah. You know, you take care of them and look after them. And there was a couple of nurses.
Then they want to be around you too.
Yeah, and they did. Yeah, exactly. But there was a couple of funny times, you know, where there was teasing and different things like that, and that helped. And he was a funny guy. Like he was humorous in most things, and so he found that definitely was helping and made it lighter, and you know, because there was like a lot of serious times.
Of course.
So when did your daughters know or come to grips with the fact that this was now fatal? The prognosis wasn't good.
My oldest daughter, I believe she knew, like, more so before I did. I was really holding on right till the end. I was really believing that was my life. Dave knew that it was coming to an end, but I wasn't ready to accept that. It's not that I was in denial and say, well, I'm not even going to go to the hospital or anything.
But you're still
I was
believing.
there.
You're still
I was just
hanging on.
believing, because he had come back from so many things over a 10-year period
I know.
that I would honestly say out loud, I'm like, really? Like, really? And the girls would. My middle daughter, she had to leave the hospital. She couldn't watch and stay there. It was really, really hard for her.
For them.
And my youngest, she was with me, and when all the he had like tubes and like, there was liquids and there was a lot of thing coming to the end, and it was like his blood pressure was dropping, and it was like, you know, she just saw it, and so she wanted to go and say, can you just stop doing any kind of liquids, just stop doing anything, you know, and I let her go do that, because she knew that, okay, it's not helping my dad right now.
That's
you know?
right. I want you to talk about the last summer that you had with Dave and the girls had their dad, and how precious that was, and then, you know, the time right up until he passed away, because that was probably my favorite part in the book, because it was just so precious that you had that time. Had to do with one of your daughter's weddings.
Yeah, so when he was, he had one of these, like a surgery too, we actually thought that he was going to come out of this one surgery. They just had to do a couple of things and that we'd be fine. And we went into the surgery really strong. I can remember just kind of like, Kate, we're going to do this. We're going to get our lives back. And then we found out that he had all this cancer through the biliary tree, and that he was going to need a liver transplant. And it was like a bomb dropped on us.
Yeah.
And so then we had to go through that whole process of waiting for a phone call. And at this time, our oldest daughter was engaged, and she had got engaged the summer before all of this. And so we were looking forward to a wedding. And she had chosen a date of November 12th, 2011, so that it was a long weekend, there was an extra day. And so we were believing for that, and then all of a sudden we're needing a liver transplant. I say we because and it's funny, he'll say that in the book, it's we went for blood work. I never got cut open, I never got, but it was definitely, we did it together.
A lot of empathy there.
Yeah, and so my daughter decided to change the wedding date. Her grandma was not well, and then Dave wasn't well, and so she just felt like she should move it to July, and so she moved that date, and then he got the transplant, came home from the transplant, and they called it like he had a new lease on life.
Wow.
That he was able to do things. He felt healthier than he did in 10 years. He was able to go to a Relay for Life, a cancer fundraiser event that we had in our town. And he was able to even go and do the speech for that, and that's on YouTube. And he felt like, better than he had in the 10 years.
And he walked his daughter down the aisle at her wedding.
Yeah, and that's what he was able to do. We had family there. We picked out a suit for him, and the rehearsal, we were all bawling because we didn't even think he was going to make it through that day.
And another daughter graduated that summer.
Yeah, we had a daughter graduate, and we enjoyed our time and our summer together, and we felt like we had our dad and husband back.
But
you know what? It sounds like you have a lot more you could share about this. You know, and it is the book is here, and it's interesting because there's parts in here from your daughters, and of course you, and then from your husband who started the book.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good resource for you because
very good resource.
You know, I hear this over and over again, and I want to say it again. I said it before in the broadcast, is that there's no contradiction in believing for the best but preparing for the worst.
That's right.
It's only common sense, and there is no contradiction because you don't know when God may intervene, and we've seen it ourselves. We had a number of people in our own church who have been healed of cancer, but we've had some that weren't.
Yeah.
And so you got to know that that's not a contradiction. Yeah. And so the book and the information there is on your screen, so you can call the prayer line if you need prayer.
I just want to say the interesting thing was that David passed away November the 12th.
Alicia's
of that
original
same
wedding
year,
date.
her wedding date. So wasn't God good?
He was very good.
He was so good.
Yeah.
Very
We're
good.
out of time. Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
a part of
much.
the program.
Thank you so
God
much
bless
for
you
having
that.
me. Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of the program. Remember this, God is good.
All the time.
And all the time.
God is good.
See you next time.
Bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This program is supported by viewers like you, and we thank you for your partnership. We want to hear from you. Send us your prayer requests, praise reports, and comments on the program. Be sure to visit our website for up-to-date information or get in touch with us by email or phone. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.